Hi, welcome to Nolan Financial Radio. My name is Tara Nolan from Nolan Financial. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is an educational show, and we always talk about something related to money because it's all about planning and getting to your financial success. So if you are new, I would encourage you to please visit my website at www.taraenolan.com or www.nolanfinancialpartners.com. And while you're there, click on the radio page because we record these shows. You can go back and pick a topic that's of interest to you. We talk about everything from Social Security to buying a new home and moving to a new place in retirement to Medicare, all different kinds of topics, IRAs, all that kind of good stuff. Because Chris and I really think that your success starts with being able to ask good questions. There's no lack of information out on the internet, on the media, anywhere you look, there's information. It's trying to figure out and sort through all that information to go, what do I need for me right now? So you can also give Chris and I a call at 719-210-4242 if you have a question or if you want to set up a complimentary call. We do face-to-face and virtual meetings today. So give us a call, 719-210-4242. Today, we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to talk about the things that your kids and grandkids may actually want. And it's always hard as you get older and you have your house full of things because you've collected all the stuff that means things to you. And it's always hard to kind of go, well, what do I leave to the kids? They don't want anything. So we're going to dive into that here in just a minute. I wanted to reach out and say, good morning, Tony. How are you doing? Or is it good afternoon? I'm lost.
Yeah, I think it's still morning. It feels like morning to me.
I'm dealing with the jet lag, so I don't even know what time it is.
I could probably use another cup of coffee myself. But yeah, I didn't just fly in from Germany like some people a week or two ago. But Tara, it's funny you mentioned we collect all this stuff, and you can look behind me here. That's just a small portion of my record collection,
right?
My vinyl collection. So, and by the way, folks, just a little side note, the plural of vinyl is vinyl, not vinyls. That's what that means. Kids now say, you've got a lot of vinyls. And I'm like, no, that's vinyl. They're records, but vinyl. Anyway, I have way too many records. At least that's what my wife and kids tell me. And anyone who sees my collection. But my wife and I have lived in our house for 23 years, and we've accumulated not just my album collection, but just so much stuff with 3 kids. And you accumulate stuff over the years, especially if you've been in one house. Moving is something that I think helps you declutter. When you move, you're like, okay, now we have to move it all anyway. Let's pull up the dumpster and get rid of stuff, make a bunch of trips to Goodwill. But we've tried to start that decluttering process over the last few years, and it's tough, but I'm looking forward to talking about this some more. But I had to bring up my album collection because I don't think I'm a hoarder in any way, but when it comes to records and music, I guess I am. But Tara, I'm doing great. I've had a great week. How about you? You've been busy since you've gotten back, haven't you?
I've done some traveling, and I would ask if anyone out there has a great suggestion for jet lag, let me know, because I didn't try the melatonin. I may try the melatonin next time. And I have tried getting out in the sunlight because the sunlight's supposed to be good to help you readjust. But I don't know. When I was younger, it didn't seem as hard.
Well, nothing is.
I've been home for a couple of days now, so I don't think I get to. I don't know how long do you get to keep using the excuse of jet lag.
Yeah, really. It's like, how many shows are you gonna? Let's see. It's been 2-3 weeks now that we've heard about jet lag.
Right. So, and this is going to be a year though of traveling. So I will be probably going to Germany a couple times over the year.
Wow.
And so I'm just, any insights that are out there are most welcome. And I have to say, we do have a trip coming up to Hawaii, but that's not as far. And no one wants to hear me complain about going to Hawaii. So I won't do that.
Please. You might not even want to bring up that you're going to Hawaii. That's well, I'm up in Minnesota, or we're in the mountains in Colorado under 4 feet of snow,
Well, I am thoroughly vaccinated. So Chris and I actually we have now the full Moderna vaccine and the full Pfizer vaccine because they were going to be doing vaccines at the base, and once they open a vial, if they haven't used the whole thing, they have to throw it away. So I was
Yep.
like, well, go ahead and throw that in this arm right here.
Yeah.
Don't throw
Yep.
that in the trash.
Yeah, a booster can't hurt at this point. That's what
So
they're saying. So I think I need a booster because I had 2 Pfizer shots, but it was when they first became available. It was pretty early on because my wife works in healthcare and I was able to do that. And so
I'm such a well-vaccinated individual because it seems like when I went to basic training, I got off the bus and they said, put your bag right here. And then they got in the line. They're like, where's your shot records? I'm like, in that pile over there. And they're like, oh, well, here you go. More shots. And when I was going to get my master's degree at Colorado State, they asked for my shot records and I didn't know where they were. So like, all right, we'll just go ahead and give you some more. So I have been thoroughly vaccinated.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I just, at this point, I'm like, yeah, just throw it in there. Yep. Add it to the rest of the list.
I just got my flu shot. So, and I need now, now my next one will be the booster for COVID, I think. But, well, you know, we talk about, protection. Last week we talked about protecting your money from scams, and this week we're talking about our belongings and our stuff. And I think it's going to be a great discussion. Where do you want to start this discussion?
Well, I think I want to just start and think about it because you can get into like kind of a place as a parent or a grandparent that you can get a little depressed or a little bit like, oh, my kids don't love me, they don't like my stuff, they don't want what I have. But I don't know, I just wanted to share some experiences that I've had, and I'm sure that you've had some too, Tony. But one of the ones that sticks with me first is like photos. And I remember like being a kid, and there were like, my grandmother always had this like just a basket of photographs just sitting on the coffee table. So like if you sat down, instead of like having a book to read, you could just kind of pick through some old photos. And it was really fun because it wasn't like today where like, you have your iPhone, you can just take like 5 pictures and go, I don't want any of those. Where you used to have to think a little bit more because you took a photo and then you had to go get it developed, and you could only take like 36. And so it just seemed like there was a little more thought maybe that went into photos at some point. So I really enjoyed that part. But I can tell you though, about 3 years ago, my grandmother, when she was cleaning out her supplies, she just kind of organized photos of all the different kids. And it's an Irish Catholic family, Tony, so there was 9 kids. And so what she did was she packed them all up and sent the photos to each of the kids. And I can remember for my mom was just like, grandma doesn't love me anymore. Why did she send me my baby pictures?
Oh,
and it was just like one of those situations where, cross purposes, where good intentions.
You got to understand the intention, right?
Right. And so, things like that, when it has meaning to you, it's you have to think about like what it means to you, how it means the other person. And so photos, I think, is like one thing where, have you ever watched on YouTube? I've clicked through and they'll have those like little videos of old timey photos.
Oh yeah.
Or they're not even old timey anymore. I've noticed some of them are like from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But they're kind of fun. Like, hey, my grandma was way cooler than me. And, it's pictures of their grandmother on a motorcycle or,
oh, wow.
Or, and I'll watch those because I think they're fascinating.
Yeah. I think they're great too.
So I think when you're looking at like things that you have, your photos it's probably worthwhile that your family may want those, but you might want to sort through them. So, you don't need the throwaway picture. Like, oh, I clicked the camera and took a picture of the floor. Like nobody wants that.
Right.
But pictures that have some thought with them, something, I think your point, Tony, what you said is it goes back to the intention.
Yep.
And what is that memory that's really being shared or that moment that's being shared?
Yeah. Sharing family memories is a good thing. That's a positive thing. And, the reality is not everybody's going to view those the same way, or like, some people that's going to be very meaningful to. I think if a grandparent or parent sends you pictures, that is that's a really beautiful gesture because they want to share their history and your history with you. And so that's nice. And I mean, I went through my parents' photos. My mom and dad are getting older. My mom has Parkinson's and it's getting worse. So she wanted me down there, and I spent 2 full days just from morning to night going through drawers and drawers of pictures, albums, old clippings, and sat at the table with my mom going through it. And my grandfather, who's 100, was up at his house last weekend or 2 weeks ago now. And he has a bunch of pictures in drawers in his basement, and he's telling me who they are. His memory's sharp. This is so-and-so. This was so-and-so. I'm writing stuff on the back. And he's going to give those to his kids, my dad and my aunt and my uncle, and then some to us grandkids. But, he's looking at some of his stuff. He plans on living another 100 years. So I don't know how that's going to work, but he's 100 and he said, no, I'm just, this isn't for right away, but in case you want these photos at some point, it's like, grandpa, he's funny. But anyway, you're right. I mean, and photos are a big one.
That's a good one. A tougher one, I think, can be the collectibles.
Yep, antiques or collectibles.
And I really don't understand this, but there's a whole antiquing world out there, and I really don't understand what makes something like a valuable antique versus just someone else's stuff.
Junk. Yeah, you were nice. You said stuff.
I had to monitor myself. I'm like, PG.
Junk is what I call most of it. But yeah, it is interesting. And I don't understand antiquing, although I come from live in an antiquing community where we're on a river and the main street is just antique stores up and down both sides. Right. And I see some of the prices on some of the things and I'm like, I had that as a kid, threw it away. Right. Shouldn't have thrown it away or given it away. Apparently, now it's worth hundreds of dollars. Right.
My grandmother was a collector of things. So she collected a lot of different things, but I can remember. So what I really treasure is this memory I have of sitting with her and we were going through and helping repack. She was collecting plates. I don't know, like they look like dinner plates to me, but they're just stacks and stacks of plates. So I was helping her take the plate and put a piece of paper in it. And then we went through each one and she looked at it and admired it. And she's like, well, someday these are going to be yours, and packing them and putting them in boxes and boxes. And it was just kind of seemed, I was like, this is an interesting thing. I guess she enjoys this. Like we're just looking at plates, putting them back in the box, packing them back up. But what I really valued was that memory of sitting with her. It was something that obviously she enjoyed and she treasured. Now, do I want boxes of plates? No. But I will always have that memory. Yeah, and I can tell you, I have no idea what ended up happening to those plates when she passed about 10 years ago.
You're being honest, yeah.
But, well, it's kind of it may just be our family, but it's a little bit of the Irish humor, or maybe the Long Island, New York humor of when someone is getting older and about to pass, everyone walks around with a sticky and puts their name on things they want.
Yep. Yep, they're starting to do that at my grandpa's house, and he invited his kids over, not us grandkids, but his kids, my dad and his sister and brother, and then it's like, go through that basement, put stickies on stuff.
Right. And so it's an interesting thing, but I think a lot of this comes back to like this whole thing of what do my kids and grandkids want? I think what you want is connection. And you want to feel like, you're part of the family and there's a history, and stuff is like a way, like you can have a thing because it's a memory. But what people really want, I think, is that connection and that memory. And it may or may not be because of that thing that you have in your hand.
Right.
And I think when people are trying to go through their stuff is like, when you're going through the boxes, what memories are those triggering within you? And then those are the stories that you want to share. And I would put forth and have you consider that maybe what your family, your kids and your grandkids really want from you are some stories. Like, this little knickknack that you have. Okay, what's the story behind that knickknack? Like, why does that matter to you? And what was special? What happened associated with that knickknack that made that special? And I think if you start thinking about something like that, That's what's really going to matter with your
Yeah.
stuff that your kids are actually going to
Yeah.
want.
Right. And I mean, again, this ties into having a plan in place. We're basically talking about legacy planning. People think, oh, we're talking about decluttering or what to do with your stuff. And a lot of that ties back into it's part of legacy planning. I mean, how long do you want to hang on to something? And what's going to happen to it when you're gone? You can't take it with you. So, it kind of ties into having a financial plan. And I know you and Chris help people with legacy planning. So that includes things like wills, powers of attorney, medical power of attorney, trusts, making sure that they work with, attorneys to get all those things in place. So, how can our listeners get a hold of you to set up a complimentary consultation to talk to you or Chris and get a financial plan in place that includes a plan on what they want to leave behind for their family?
Sure, Tony. Folks should call 719-210-4242. That's 719-210-4242. And Tony, that is the best way to get a complimentary call set up. We can do face-to-face meetings. We also do virtual meetings. Face-to-face is always better, but in this day and age, we have clients all over the country, so we also do a lot of virtual meetings. But if you go through that process to start to think about, well, what do I want to leave to my family and how do I want to do it? This is the way you start doing that, is creating your financial plan that kind of goes through and organizes it. And through that process, then you can start to be very intentional about how you organize and what you leave to different people in your family. So that number, Tony, is 719-210-4242 for people that are ready to start going, I really want to get my plan organized and written down. And I've lost your sound, Tony.
You know what? That's great, Tara. I was just saying nolanfinancialpartners.com. Great website. Your new website is awesome. It's at nolanfinancialpartners.com. That's awesome. And I encourage our listeners to get a hold of you. And they can even go online and listen to past shows for some more financial tips. This has been a great discussion so far, talking about our stuff, decluttering. A lot of times heading into retirement, we want to downsize. That's part of retirement planning. So this is a good conversation today. What's next? What do you want to touch on next?
So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit, Tony. And this was something like way back when I was younger, before I had started my financial business. I read this book and it resonated with me. This guy, what he was doing was setting up two things. He setting up a family vault of knowledge so that you could organize all those things that you go, wow, if I'd only known then what I know now. And in creating this vault of knowledge for the family. And then he also created basically a little mini bank for the family, where he used his insurance and set up an account inside of a trust. And it became a place for, as younger grandkids were coming along, it was a place where they could get a car loan. It was a place where they could get the first down payment for their house. And then they paid it back into the family vault. So he just created this own little family vault that was available. And everybody, borrowed when they needed it, and then they paid back. And so it just created a lot of control and a way to protect and care for his family. And I was that hit me. That hit me. I'm like, that's so cool, because, almost anybody can set that up, because anybody can almost qualify for insurance and put that together. And it's the kind of thing, you set it up and then it keeps growing, right? So if you set it up and you put it inside that trust, then it becomes a thing that keeps growing. And I just love that, Tony, because I think about, like, for my family, what really helped us was being in the military, that we qualified for our VA loans, because I didn't, how long it takes to save up 20% down for a house? Yeah. Especially when you're a kid out of college and you're trying to pay student loans. And I mean, that can be forever before you can buy a house.
Yeah, because you're starting off at, the lower levels of pay in your career field as well. You're not starting off at the top typically. So you got student loans, and that's tough, getting that down payment and getting the home loan.
And I always remember in one of the presidential debates, Mitt Romney was like, well, why don't you just get a loan from your dad? And I had to
Oh,
laugh. I'm like, well, Mr. Romney, not everybody can do that. So
yeah.
it's
Wow.
not
Yeah,
that they
that
haven't thought
really
of it.
it really shows how out of touch he was with the regular people, right?
Well,
Why
to
don't you
me
just
that
get a loan from your dad? Why
right.
don't you just ask your dad for money?
And
Oh, yeah, good one, buddy. All right. Well, that is funny. I had forgotten about that, but that is crazy. That was funny. I mean, funny now.
well, I just
Be
loved it because he was just being earnest. He wasn't trying to be mean. That's
No,
just the reality that he was functioning
he
in.
did not.
And
But it does show a lack of understanding of how the rest of the world lives.
right, right.
So
And
anyway, well, that's wow, that setting up that vault for your family, and not just that was a financial vault they set up, and I know that you and Chris, if somebody wants to do that, could go over the ways in which that can work and how to do that, and I think that's another reason. For folks to pick up the phone and give you a call. And you can do that with knowledge as well, passing on knowledge of how to do these things. So a vault of knowledge, a vault of assets for folks if they need it. That is really great. How can our listeners, once again, let's give that number in case people need it.
sure, Tony. So to reach out to Chris and I to set up a complimentary appointment, the number is 719-210-4242. That's 719-210-4242. And that's for those folks listening today that kind of get excited about the idea of leaving a legacy for their family, whether it's information and knowledge or some kind of a trust account. There's really cool things that you can do. I get excited. Chris and I are doing that for our family. We don't have kids ourselves, but I have lots of nieces and nephews. And that's
Sure.
one of the big things we're setting up is we're going to create this legacy for the Nolan family that will go in perpetuity so that all the kids and grandkids will have access. Because just imagine starting out life, Tony, if you don't have to worry about how you're going to be able to get a loan from the bank to buy a car, to buy a house. Like, imagine if that was just like taken care of with your family.
Wow. That is huge.
That gives
That's
me
huge.
chills. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's so awesome. That's a great idea, and I love that one. And Sarah and I should look into that as well. I mean, we're doing that with our own kids already, basically.
Sure.
But I think that's great. Now, what's the next thing? I mean, we're kind of talking beyond the stuff that we accumulate. What do you
Well,
want
and
to
I think now we want to talk a little bit about the knowledge that you can leave. And I just wanted
Sure.
to give folks a couple ideas. I mean, we talked about like to be able to like how to buy a home and how to buy a car.
Ah,
But even things like Tony, like how do you start selecting schools for your kids?
mm,
Because I don't know how it is where you are, but in Colorado there is like every kind of school. There's public schools, there's charter schools, there's Montessori schools, there's do you
yep,
start your kids in preschool, and there's so much information.
yep.
Wouldn't that be
Education
nice?
has become a lot more complicated.
And wouldn't that be nice to have that handed down to you from your family, so it at least is a starting spot, so that
Right.
you're not just like going from scratch and going, what do I do? And and I don't know how it was for you, but like my first experience buying a home, I was on my own. I didn't.
Yeah, we were a mess. Yeah, yeah. Sarah and I, when we bought our first house, we were in Nashville, and we loved the home, but the experience of buying our first home was a pain.
Well, and I ended up. I had a strong negotiating tactic of I only had this much money.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think the house that I looked at, they said no, and then they came back to me 4 months later because they hadn't sold it, and I was like, "Well, my offer still stands."
yeah. This is what I have to
And
put down on this house. So
but
yeah,
it was
yeah,
8% interest, which was the going rate at the time. And and
yeah.
I just didn't. I was just going on faith, going, okay, I hope I'm not being a huge chump because I'm signing a lot of
We
paperwork.
were really excited to get 7.5% interest on ours. I think it was 7.56 or something. And we were like, yes. And now, of course, now we're down below 3 and we're like, oh yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Or
right.
yeah, right in that zone, 2 point something,
So it just goes
3%.
right,
Yep.
right.
Yep. I
So
think
I
it's
mean,
going to
just
go back up
imagine.
though.
Yeah, just imagine if you had like a vault of family knowledge, and then you'll be adding to it. So
Yeah.
you get the information you have, and then you keep adding to it. Because like sitting around the coffee table or the kitchen table as a kid, I didn't learn about money. But Tony, there are families that do.
Yeah.
And they talk about those things. And so there's
Yep.
some people that just grow up, money isn't a weird thing. It doesn't have all that emotional baggage. And so I love this idea of just creating like a knowledge vault. And then that just becomes part of normal conversation.
That's great. Yeah. That's really good. I wish we didn't talk about money growing up, and I wish we had. It would have helped me out. Same with my wife. So we've tried to do that more with our kids, and I just can't believe they don't have more education starting at an earlier age in school for personal finance.
Exactly. Like just, like one of the things that's criminal is that you'll start getting credit cards in the mail when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
18. And
Yep.
and as a kid, you're like, well, they wouldn't have sent it to me if I wasn't qualified.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's got my name
Yeah.
on it and everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how an
Mom doesn't need to
18-year-old.
know about this.
Yeah, that happens. That's what's scary. So what else do we need to know about?
Well, and then just imagine if you knew how to start investing from the future, like from as a kid going through, like you didn't have to like figure everything out from scratch.
Yes.
Like for me,
Yep.
I got I graduated from college and I got my first check, and it was all I could do to like pay rent, buy toilet paper, get groceries in the house.
Yep.
I was on the fence about whether or not I was going to be able to afford a phone line.
Right.
And so
Yep.
this
I
notion
remember
of
those
like,
days.
like investing, I would have been like, are you kidding me? I'm just trying to like survive here.
Yeah.
But it's good to know, even before you have a lot of money, to start investing, like, just a little bit, because it's as much, Tony, as about the habit pattern as it is about the amount.
Yep.
And,
Getting into
just
that cycle, that habit. Yep.
I went and I
Exactly.
got some education because they were offering it, so I took advantage. And like the seminal piece of information was pay yourself first. And the guy
That's a
was like,
big
you
one.
should, whenever you get your paycheck, you should just pay yourself first. And actually, I think this is a foot stomper for everybody listening, is when you get your paycheck, you need to pay yourself first, whether it's 1%, 10%, but take that money and put it over into a separate account, and you just pay yourself first. And then that account can grow slowly, but that way you're building that cash reserve that you need to have.
Yes.
And I think,
And believe me, you'll need it, and you'll be so happy you did that.
and creating that habit pattern, because a lot of times we're in the habit pattern of you spend all your money and you're out, and then you might put things on a credit card.
Yeah.
And that's just a way to start out life digging yourself into a hole. And so
Yeah,
there's
not
little
good.
things of knowledge that if they're passed down from parent to child, you can start out life ahead. And you may make some bad choices, but at least you're making a choice. You're just not making bad decisions because you didn't know a better way.
Right. Right. Well, you know what, Tara? This has been great, but we're out of time. What do you have for our listeners before we go?
Well, I mean, the bottom line for today is thinking about, we're all governed by fear and greed. And so that can make you vulnerable to scams. So just think about it. If you get some kind of something coming at you that doesn't feel right, doesn't smell right, makes you feel rushed, just hang up. Don't do it. If it's important, they'll call back and you can sort it out. So that's the big foot stomper. And then we talked about all the cool stuff you can do with leaving and creating a legacy. But if you're interested in looking at how do you do this, especially if you're like, well, my budget doesn't accommodate for that, give Chris and I a call at 719-210-4242. We can set up a complimentary appointment to talk about how you could do that. And it's really exciting.
Awesome. Well, great show today, Tara. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Nolan Financial Radio with our host, Tara Nolan.
Join us soon for another episode of Nolan Financial Radio. Take care, and we'll talk with you next time.